Good morning to my friends and family, and welcome to Jim's 5am Club. On the train at the moment, heading from Wynyard to Circular Quay, and what we're going to do this morning is go through a book summary entitled The Happiness Trap by a dual authorship of Russ and Stephen Hayes. Before I get off the train, I'll just go through one of the first quotes of the book. And the first quote is, "Having negative thoughts and feelings means that I am a normal human being," which is a powerful sort of concept and a realization that by having negative thoughts and feelings just means that we are just normal human beings. So here we are. Let's alight and see what reveals itself on this magical Friday. So happy Friday, everybody, from beautiful Sydney Harbour. I can see a little bit of cloud up there. A gentle breeze, as you can see all the flags just fluttering in this northeasterly breeze, which is mild and very, very beautiful. So this book here, once again, deals with the concept of mindfulness, and the author admits that mindfulness has become very fashionable, and I can attest to that because quite a few of the book summaries that I've been through recently talk about mindfulness, and it comes up a lot. It's one of those topics which comes up a lot. But in terms of mindfulness, the author also states something which a lot of us may not be aware of, because if we were aware of it, we wouldn't behave the way we behave. But the important point that the author makes is that fighting against your emotions is the best way to get stuck in them. How many times have we tried to fight emotion only to find that the more we fight it, just like quicksand, the more we fight that negative emotion, the more we get stuck in that negative emotion and just can't exit it. For example, when we're angry or when we're fearful, the more we fight it, the more we feel it. So let's go on a walk and talk and just see where this book summary leads us. But it's an absolute cracker. It's a great book summary indeed. So what the author says here is an interesting point, is that you can't always choose how you feel, but you can always choose how you act. So that's a very empowering entry into some of these points that we're going to go through in this book. Whilst we can't change how we feel, and emotions are a natural thing, and the author will also suggest to us that instead of fighting our emotions, what we do is embrace them. Whilst we can't change our emotions, we can change the way we act, which is a call to action. So the first point to lead from this book is that people, let me take the mask off because my voice is muffled. People often tend to make negative emotions much worse than they have to be by fighting against them. And we've made this point before, but we just need to keep on harping on it. Because if you're fighting an emotion, then you're making it worse than what it is. You're giving it oxygen, you're giving it life, and you're making it front of mind. Because what happens is that we add additional stress, sadness and anger on ourselves by fighting and resisting these feelings, which make them stick stick and make them tougher to remove from our life. So the author then gives us a heads up and just reminds us that we have little control over our emotions. Whilst we think we've got a lot of control, we actually have little control over our emotions, because our brains, the way we're wired, the way we're designed, our brains are constantly on the lookout for danger and threats, both real and imagined. And whenever, and we'll even make them up. So our reptilian brain, our old brain, our basic brain is always on the lookout for danger, both real and imagined. This is very, very important to understand, because our brain can identify real dangers, but it can also imagine dangers, and in some cases can even create those dangers in our mind. A lot of people who are stuck in these conspiracy theories are people who use their imagination to create dangers which are not really there. So, and we're surrounded by people who suffer these mental conditions. How you going, matey? Have a good weekend. So the author then reminds us that our minds, our brains, have a life of their own. And it's okay not to endorse all of its thoughts. Just because your brain wants to make up stuff, make up shit, and the people around you have a desire to create an illusion, doesn't mean that you have to accept it and to take it on, is what the message is saying here. You don't have to endorse all your thoughts. You don't have to endorse all the things that your brain comes up with, and you can learn to ignore it. Yes, you can learn to ignore it, and to ignore the inner critic, ignore the inner cynic. And as one author said, the limbic brain, the old brain, is like a wild elephant. And once a wild elephant gets spooked and goes on a rampage, you just can't stop it. But you can ignore it and just get out of its way, is one of the key lessons from this book. So what we're doing here is we're learning that we can just accept the way we are and the way the brain is, and just learn to get out of its way rather than to become a victim of its craziness and its rampage. So let me just flick over the page, go to the next page of these notes that I took on the bus this morning. And here we have our tiger, fully blown up, sitting in the parkland here. So the author also here talks about a technique called expansion, and there's a call to action to practice expansion, and it's an odd sort of technique, but what he basically says here is that if you have negative feelings and thoughts, to basically try and just visualize them and breathe them in, but because, and it's counterintuitive, but I guess I can understand how it can work, because rather than fighting those feelings, what you do is you allow them a space to come in for a visit, and then they will leave on their own accord. But if you're fighting them, if you're pushing them back and you're not giving them room, then they'll continue to try and fight to gain access to you in one shape or form. So what the author is saying is, just give them room, they'll come, they'll visit, and because they feel that you're not pushing them away, they'll come and go. So the next thing that the author talks about in this wonderful book is that we need to learn to enjoy the pleasant feelings when they do arise, because we're habitual in nature. Things come and go. If you've got a good feeling, if you feel that there's a pleasure coming on, regardless of what it is, what the author is saying is that learn to enjoy these pleasant feelings in the moment when they arise. And it doesn't work when you try to pursue happiness or pursue pleasures or pursue indulgences. That's a very important point to come out of this book. If you're trying to create happiness, or you're trying to create a moment, the author is saying here that it doesn't work. So don't chase happiness. Just enjoy it when it appears, especially small ones. Because the small ones, from what the author is saying here, you need to enjoy those small pleasures for what they are and for however long they last. Don't try and make good feelings come or stay, and don't try and make negative emotions leave. Just ride them out like a surfer rides a wave. Let them slip on by. This is good advice, and advice that I guess we all should have been aware of many years ago. Because what people try and do is they try and create magical moments and try and create things, and they just try too bloody hard. And by trying too hard, they just don't climax. They just don't get to the point where the wave crests and you can get on it and ride it, I guess, is the big lesson. And the third lesson from this book, from this author, is to don't try and design how you feel. Just act on your values. If you know what you want, if you know what your values are, if you know what you value highly in your life, and know, I guess, what the author is saying, if you know what your values are, then when the things slip by you or come into your day that tick those boxes, then embrace them for what they are at that point in time. But what we shouldn't be doing, according to this author, is because emotions are uncontrollable, and it's natural to feel good and bad emotions, because our emotions are uncontrollable, we've got to learn to stop struggling against them. So rather than fight them, rather than struggle against them, the trick is to ride them out, mount them and ride them for as long as we can, and learn to surf them is the key message. Because once you establish your values and you can take incremental steps to realizing them, as long as they're aligned to your chosen goals. So stop struggling and start living is the final point to come out of this book. And I think we'll leave it there. So thank you very much for joining me on Jim's 5am Club. I'll finish off with a positive affirmation. I'm alive, I am well, and I feel absolutely great. To my friends and family, stay connected, stay relevant, stay reasonable. And let's take some points from this wonderful book, from this co-authorship on the happiness trap, and learn not to try and create happiness, not to try and pursue it, but to embrace it when it appears, to surf it, to not fight those negative feelings, and not to endorse our thoughts, and not to try and endorse our negative thoughts, our critical thoughts, but to give them room to take place, or take up room in our lives, hoping that by giving them the permission to come, then they'll also leave as quickly as they can without spending too much of their time making our lives a misery. So there you go. I guess that'll finish up this book summary for today. Once again, happiness is a science, is something that we can all learn a little bit more of. So thank you once again for joining me on Jim's 5am Club, and I look forward to coming to you a little bit later in the morning during my morning tea and lunchtime to crank through another couple of books, see what they teach us, see where they lead us, and to have a tiger of a day, and to be proud, to be relaxed, and to build our knowledge and our potential knowledge, and to see where it takes us. Yassas, Filakia from Jim's 5am Club, and we'll chat again later in the day. Bye for now.